new listeners. Whether or not you've been a listener for a long time or not, you're counted as such. So with that, let's ring the bell, Kim. There, that's so much fun. I love to hear that bell ring. If you want to make that bell ring by becoming a new donor, please do so now at 888-287-0655, 888-287-0655. You can also text the word give to 419-969-5261. That's 419-969. Did I say 9261? Or did I say
I'm not sure.
3255?
It's 419-969-3255.
3255. I told you that my phone number starts 419-969. It just rolls right off the tongue. 5261. But no, it's 3255. You can text me, then maybe I'll text you that number. And you can then text that and then get your link and make your donation. So either way, we have a lot of fun. We make mistakes, and either way, it's a good day. Looking forward to the rest of our day today. By the way, our next guest here is in studio. I want to turn my cameras so that we can see everybody, and that would be this button right here, as we're live on Facebook and YouTube right now for folks to watch us. We are now joined in studio with Deacon Matt Kettinger, right? Kettinger. See, it was close.
We were wondering ahead of time how strongly to hit that G.
That's right. So Deacon Matt is a permanent deacon over at St. Michael's over in Findlay, and just want to invite him in and say hello. Great to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming in today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, so one of the things that I like to do is, when we invite priests to come in or others, to kind of talk to them a little bit about who they are and maybe what was the idea behind becoming ordained.
Sure. My journey was a long one. I was older when I've only been ordained a year and a half, and I will be 64 here shortly. So in my diaconate class, I was one of the older fellas. I was ordained with 23 men in September of 2021, and I was born and raised Catholic. I grew up in Toledo and came from a pretty good-sized family. I have 5 brothers and sisters. And I never strayed too far from the faith, even though I strayed. Mm-hmm. Thought about priesthood as a teen a little bit, but never really looked into it. And, I did missionary work as a high school student and as a college student. And it really struck me the goodness of missionary priests. And so that idea of service never left me. But got married, had children, owned a business, and got busy with life. Yet, when I was about 35 or so, I met with a deacon who has since passed away. And I remember going to his condominium and just sitting with him for an hour or so and asking about the life of a deacon. And it intrigued me, and I was interested, but I left and I thought, no, that's not for me. That's for somebody else. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, maybe 10 years or so later, met with a different deacon, Gary Thrun, who you might know. And same thing. I remember having breakfast with him at a Bob Evans in Perrysburg and asking him about the diaconate. And I was intrigued, but I thought, no, this is not for me. And I do prison ministry, and so I went to a national prison conference in Milwaukee, 10 years ago or so, had lunch with a couple deacons, and they asked me about it, and I thought, nope. And so just kept saying no, but God kept knocking, and after I had a first career, and then I sold my business and then became a teacher. And I was teaching at St. Wendell Catholic High School in Fostoria. I was teaching theology. And when that school closed in, I think, 2016, the high school closed, I thought, okay, God, what do you want me to do? And he said, I've been telling you for 25 years, I want you to consider being a deacon. So when that school closed and I was looking ahead at my life asking God, what do you want? What can I do? And so that's when I seriously looked into the diaconate and deacon formation.
Okay. So yeah, that's what happens a lot to people, is that they kind of hear different things that kind of tugs at them a little bit, like why did they say that, or why do I always seem to be encountering deacons at things like that, right? So I mean, that was the same for me, where a long time ago someone suggested, perhaps you should be a deacon. Ever think about that? And you hear that all the time with priests too. They mention it to them, hey, you'd make a good priest, and you're thinking, what, me? No. So, yeah, it's kind of amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it never left me, even though I kept putting it off and putting it off. The thought was always in the back of my mind. And one of the things that, and this, Deacon Jeff, but it was critical that I had deep, prayerful conversations with my wife about this, because I needed her support. And I needed her to be on board completely with the vocation of the diaconate if I were to move forward. And that itself was a process. I can't say that right away she said, oh, great, go do this. It was not the case. It took us years of prayer and discernment and back and forth to hear that, this is where God wants me. But it was not an easy journey and an easy conversation.
Yeah. So once you kind of discerned that, okay, maybe I should take this path, how long does that process take, as far as, joining a cohort, let's say, or that whole process for formation?
Sure. For my class and for my formation, it was 4 years. And with the current class, who is in formation right now, it is still 4 years. However, it's going to be changing to 5 years.
5, okay.
Yeah, so the USCCB has requested that with all deacon formation programs, it's a minimum of 5 years. Some are longer. Some are 7 years, some are 6. But the Diocese of Toledo, starting with the next cohort, which will be in 2024 when they'll start, they will be in a 5-year formation.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
I always thought ours was 5 years, because I considered the application year is kind of part of it, because there's some things from application through discernment.
Right. So you're right. There's 4 years that you and I did, I believe, Deacon Jeff, that it was 4 years of formal formation with 1 year preceding it of, I guess maybe it's called aspirancy. It's kind of doing more work with understanding the catechism, understanding what the role of the deacon is, maybe doing service work in your parish. So that first year is not formal training, at least what you and I did.
Right.
It was more informal, but kind of discerning, is this really where God wants you to be? And then being more active in your parish and communicating more with your pastor. That's going to change in that, so it will be 5 formal years starting in 2024.
That's interesting.
Yeah. It makes me wonder things like, what additional, are they adding additional curriculum, or are they just spreading out the curriculum that they use? Fascinating.
Yeah, so my understanding, Kim, is that it's going to be a little bit more service oriented that extra year. Deacon Jeff knows this, but the word deacon comes from diakonos, meaning servant. We are called to be servants of our parishes and of our communities. And so that extra year hopefully is going to be a little bit more service oriented. I know that when the formation is 4 years, which seemed like a lot going through, there wasn't a lot of dedicated time to doing service work. And that essentially is what we do. It's what Deacon Jeff is doing right now, is serving the community of Glandorf and Ottawa through the through the Holy Family Radio.
Right.
So so that next year, the additional year would be more service oriented. Yeah.
So what was the part that you enjoyed the most, or at least memorable part of that whole process?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think probably 2 things that were most profound for me in the formation process. One was just actually discerning God's will for my life. Part of the diaconate is a good part of the diaconate is prayer and meeting with the spiritual director and looking inward to see, is this where God wants me? Am I on the right path? So there's a lot of opportunity for prayer and introspection and really understanding God's will for one's life. And so for me, I'd say that was probably the most profound thing, just spending time deeply in prayer. Mm-hmm. Probably the other thing, and you probably experienced this as well, is developing friendships with the men who were in my cohort. Again, I was one of 23 men, and I had a thought in my mind that, as a 60-year-old person, my friendships in my life have already been set. The people that I hang out with, the people that I love, the people that I like doing things with, that group is pretty much set. I'm an old guy now, and I don't really need new friends. And once I started into the deacon formation process and met these other men who were like-minded, loved the Lord, wanted to serve, I have developed unbelievable friendships with these guys. Mm-hmm. And gratefully, we still meet. I meet with one group of fellas who are from the Putnam County area, Lima area. Mm-hmm. We meet every other month for dinner in Bluffton. And then another group of guys, 10 of us that were more toward Tiffin, Fremont, Fostoria, we meet every other month for dinner. So these guys are my closest friends right now, and I would have not expected that 6 years ago. I would have not expected that I could make new friends at this age, but then the deep friendships that we have formed through the diaconate have just been phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly is what you might call a brotherhood, of deacons. And the last retreat that I went at the Pines.
I was with you.
Yes, and they mentioned that they would like to see more of kind of what we have with the priests.
Right.
And I thought, I wasn't surprised by the fact that we have this brotherhood, because we understand our role as servants. So we're there to serve our leaders, our pastors, and they're, in a sense, they're the ones that are in charge of everything. So mm-hmm. it's difficult to kind of get together and share, because this is mine, right?
Right.
So
yeah, and I know in some parishes that's easier for deacons, and it's certainly easier in some places for priests, because priests oftentimes are serve alone. They're the pastor.
Right.
At Finley St. Michael's, we are blessed. We're blessed not only because we have 2 full-time priests and a senior status priest with Monsignor Hohenbrink, but we have 6 deacons. Mm-hmm. And, 2 are just into senior status, but 4 are active. And so we're with each other a lot. Our wives know each other. Yeah. We love each other, and we love hanging out with each other. So it's really a pretty darn nice situation to be around brothers that you love and serve with.
Yeah, for sure. And when you got started, I put it this way: when I got started with the formation and some of the education that was involved, I remember being excited and ready to plunge in to learning stuff. And I remember the first course being theological anthropology. And I thought, I want to learn how to do baptisms and all this other stuff. I wanted to figure out what to do part. And it's just like, there's this whole formation part where they kind of build you up, all the foundational stuff. And I come to really enjoy that. But what was your approach coming in? Were you like really excited? Let's go. Or was it more like, okay, I'll just kind of.
I was different for a couple of reasons. I was not, I guess in regards to your question, as far as doing baptisms and things like that, I had never been an altar server. I had never done anything in regards to liturgy ever. I was a lector, but that was it. So my experience as far as serving on the altar was minimal. I had no experience with it at all. So it was not something that I looked forward to. I really, if there was a part of the diaconate that I thought, I really don't mind if I never do this, it was serving at the altar. I had never done it, and I thought, if I'm in the background and I just kind of teach RCIA, that's fine for me. I don't need to be up there. And that's not the case. If you're a deacon, you're going to be up there.
Yes.
And so, but the other thing I guess unique about me is I went into it and I had a master's degree in theology already. I had, during my career, my first career, I was actually a dentist. And so I had dental practice in Findlay. And during the years that I was a dentist, I also got a master's degree in theology. And so I was teaching quite a bit in RCIA. I taught for the diocese, the Mysterium Christi program. And then I after I retired from dentistry, I taught theology for 6 years at St. Wendell Catholic High School. So I was teaching theology. So the academic part of it I liked, but it wasn't as daunting maybe as for some people who are coming into this and, studying philosophy and Christology, and it's overwhelming. It was challenging, but I was used to it. It was something I'd done already. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You were well used to the academic
I was.
space, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah.
So that wasn't, for me, that wasn't the most challenging part. It was the discerning for me was the hard part.
Yeah.
Just, is this where God wants me? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We're talking to Deacon Matt Kenninger at during your Holy Family Radio Spring Spirit Drive here. It's day 2, Thursday, and we are waiting for your call at 888-287-0655. That's 888-287-0655. So, Deacon Matt, I wanted to ask you.
I got to interrupt you because we do have a donation that came in.
Okay.
It came in right at the very beginning, and it's an honor of you, Deacon Matt, from my brother's twin, or it's your brother's twin,
Greg Zeller.
Greg Zeller, yes. Who offered a donation here today. So
well, thank you, Greg.
Yes, thank you so much.
So I need to call my brother now to get it.
there you go.
Yes,
to
thank
get his
him.
twin in and donate. Right. Thanks.
Well, I was curious. Have there been any surprises since since you've been ordained in serving? Have there been any surprises in what your responsibilities are, or anything else you can share with us?
Yeah, I'll go back to something I just said, a couple of minutes ago, in that I was not looking forward to serving at the altar. I really wasn't. So a surprise was how much I've really enjoyed serving at the altar. And again, Deacon Jeff knows this. We're not to be the face. We're not to be out there in the front. But I've really enjoyed assisting the priests, and so that has been a surprise. A couple things also that I don't know if they're surprises, but when they happen, they are a little bit surprising. So it happens quite often where people, and it's typically after Mass or before Mass, ask me to either bless a religious item, a sacramental, or ask me to bless them. And when that happens, you can't say, well, let me get my prayer card out. You have to, right at that moment, offer the blessing.
Right.
And so you have to be comfortable with that and comfortable with people. And so it's been enjoyable, but also when you're put on the spot, it's okay, Holy Spirit, guide me through this, because I want to be an effective vehicle of your grace.
Right.
And so to be able to say the right things in those instances is both a challenge and a blessing.
Yeah.
As far as surprises, I have found I really enjoy funerals. For me, if people know me, they probably think, well, that's no surprise. I've always loved funerals. I love attending funerals. I will go to funerals of people that I don't know because I love how well the Catholic Church does funerals.
Oh.
Unlike nothing else, we really show tremendous reverence and respect to the end of life. And we're so hopeful at funerals. So I love funerals. I love now assisting, and if it's the opportunity in which I am the presider at a funeral or a vigil or a committal, I love it. I love being with people at that difficult time of their life. So that's been, I don't know if it's a surprise, but I've really enjoyed it.
I think it's a surprise. I think that's not something anyone that a lay person at least would ordinarily think, oh, somebody's going to enjoy a funeral or, enjoy serving in connection with a funeral. And yeah, that was very enlightening to hear, kind of the why behind that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess, and again, this is not a surprise, but again, Finley St. Michael, the Archangel, is a big parish, and we have a lot of marriages and a lot of baptisms. And I don't know, I think I've done 30 or 40 baptisms, but I've been able to baptize my grandchildren as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been really, in fact, just on 4 days ago or 5 days ago, I baptized a grandson. So yeah, it's been
wonderful.
It's just been terrific. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that I mentioned this the other day, yesterday it would have been, is I had 10 baptisms on Sunday. I could not believe we had such a large group. About a third of the church was full with all these families. And so that was a real blessing and fun thing to be able to do.
Yeah.
And I enjoy that because I do almost all the baptisms at our parish. So so a lot of fun. It's really a great thing. Tell people, it's a joyous day, to bring a new little one into God's family, because it's restores that right relationship in our spirit of adoption as sons and daughters that we bring them into the church, and I go home and say, hey, another one for the kingdom, and that sort of a thing.
Well, and having done it a lot, and as you do, I've come to appreciate the baptismal rite and the prayers that we actually say, because they are just so beautiful. Mm-hmm. And then with the opportunity to offer a prayer of blessing over the mother and a prayer of blessing over the father at the end is really powerful. Yeah. So it's a beautiful, beautiful ceremony.
It really is.
Yeah.
So this is the Spring Spirit Drive here on Holy Family Radio. I want to thank you for listening and being a part of this ministry. We're asking you, if you have not, or if you have not yet made your donation, to please consider doing so now. Give us a call here at the studio at 888-287-0655. That's 888-287-0655. You can also text the word GIVE to 419-969-3255. That's 419-969-3255. It'll text you back a link that you can then follow that takes you to our online donation form. It's mobile enabled, so it's an easy way to be able to make a one-time or a recurring donation. You can do that in any way you would like. Credit card, check, bank draft, you name it. We were able to accommodate that. If you give us a call, you can tell us you'll send a check, or we can even send you an invoice to return your check or whatever to us. 888-287-0655.
And don't forget, we have those matching funds on the table.
That's right. We have $400, right?
We do.
Okay.
We do. And I'm not sure
Let me take a look at our funds here. How
much is left of that 400, but I'm pretty confident it hasn't been used up.
It has not. It's close, but not yet. So it's your opportunity now to take advantage.
Yeah. So give us a call now to take advantage of matching funds on the table and double your dollars, essentially, by somebody else matching your donation. That number is 888-287-0655. That's 888-287-0655. We're speaking here with Deacon Matt Kettinger. Deacon, I understand you have a podcast.
I do.
Can you tell us about that?
I sure can. I have, for years, been, I guess, maybe a self-described podcast geek. The format of podcasts probably has been around, I don't even know, maybe 15 years. And I love listening to Catholic radio. I love listening to Holy Family. But actually from Catholic radio, I started listening to, say, people like Bishop Barron or David Anders, and learning about podcasts, and then listening to a lot of Catholic podcasts. So I enjoy walking. I walk a lot. I walk for exercise, hours a week. I don't know, 10, 15 hours a week I walk. And so I started getting into the habit of listening to podcasts while I walk. And I listen to a lot of different formats of podcasts and how podcasts were structured and how they'd introduce them, how they'd use music. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, through prayer, I had the idea of starting a podcast in which I would interview priests of the Diocese of Toledo. And my purpose then, and it still is now, it really hasn't changed, I wanted to allow people of the diocese and parishioners to get to know their priests more on a personal level, not necessarily doctrinal. And again, there's probably not a lot of people who can say they listen to my podcast here, but if you have, people will know I don't ask deep theological questions. I don't ask about justification and go into the book of Revelation. I ask about them as persons and their interests, their hobbies, their life, their family, what they enjoy doing, what's their prayer life, how do they prepare for a homily. So my purpose is to allow parishioners to get to know their priests better on a human level, that these are good, holy, flawed men like you and I trying to do their best to serve God. Mm-hmm. So that's how I had the idea. Then I had to kind of pitch it to a couple people to see if it was viable. And so I talked to the vicar for clergy, the vocations director, and then I actually just asked the bishop, and and he said go. So yeah, so I started it about going on 3 years ago, 2.5 to 3 years ago. Yeah.
Okay, so what's it called?
The podcast is called The Padre Pad.
Okay,
and I got that from our diocese has a parish on the island of South Bass Island at Put-in-Bay. There's Our Lady of Sorrows is on South Bass Island. And for the priest to perform the liturgies, come in for Mass, especially in the summer when it's really, really busy, there's a Mass on Put-in-Bay Saturday night and Sunday morning. So the priest will come and they'll stay overnight and then they'll have Mass again. Their residence, when they stay on South Bass Island, is called the Padre Pad. So I took the name of the podcast from the residence on South Bass Island where priests stay overnight when they say Mass. So it's called the Padre Pad.
That it's a passing issue or sidetrack a little bit, but there's no priest assigned there. There's simply, or are you saying when they substitute for?
So they're on the islands. So the Lake Erie Islands have a deacon Jim O'Donnell, and his wife Christy, who help it. They are the administrators. It's Jim, but Deacon Jim is the pastoral administrator for the Lake Erie Islands. And so there are actually 3 parishes. So South Bass Island, Kelly's Island, and Middle Bass. So in the summer, in the peak of summer, there are priests who say Mass on all 3 islands. If the priest does South Bass, he will have the Mass Saturday evening and Sunday morning. So there's no resident priest for the parishes, but typically it's senior status priests who live in Catawba or Sandusky or Marblehead who have agreed to serve the islands. And it's actually not a bad gig. They kind of like it. It's nice to go out to the islands. And I know that Deacon Jim O'Donnell really appreciates their service and their ability to do that.
Yeah.
Very cool. So over those 3 years, how many priests have you interviewed?
I don't know. I would guess about 30 to 35. Okay. I publish the podcast once a month.
Okay.
So on the 10th of every month is when the podcast comes out, and I always interview priests in advance. So right now, we're in the month of April, and I think I have 2 or 3 interviews already that I've already edited and I've got ready to go to be published. And then actually next week I'm interviewing Father Jeff Walker in Bowling Green.
Okay.
But again, I'm not sure how far out I am right now. So it may be July or August that his will actually come out. So I interview priests edit, get it ready, and then publish it on the 10th of the month.
Okay.
Yeah.
So over time, have there been any themes that have come through when speaking to some of these priests? Some of the answers that you give, and what's kind of common, perhaps.
Yeah, one of the questions that I do ask most of the priests is how they relax, how they spend time outside of the normal day-to-day ministry of a parish priest. In other words, how at the end of the week, if it's been a good week, if it's been a challenging week, how do they just regroup? And it's been interesting to hear their answers, because if I've interviewed 30 priests, I've gotten 30 different answers, which makes sense. They're human. We do the same thing.
Yeah.
For me, my way to kind of relax is to either read or play music or go for a walk. That's what Matt Kettinger, likes to do. And the priests are, again, they're like all of us. They all have their way of just settling themselves after a day or a week. Some are interesting. So for instance, Father Eric Schild at Maumee St. Joseph, that you guys might know, Father Eric, he is a raging extrovert. And he said that his method of relaxing at the end of the week is to be around people, where a lot of us would say, if I'm surrounded by people all day, the last thing I want is to be around people. That's not Father Eric Schild. A lot of them have said, I like just to just sit on my porch and smoke a cigar. And a lot of them on their days off, and most priests, our bishop is not this way, but most priests actually do take a day off. And most of them, I've posed that question to, love going back to their family of origin, whether or not it's their parents, if they're still alive, or spending time with a sister or a brother. So the commonality is that they go to what comforts them, whether or not it's a cigar or being with family. But again, that's just like the rest of us. We all find the way that makes us feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So that, I guess that's been kind of a common theme. The other is, and we talked about this a little bit earlier when we were talking about deacons and having a brotherhood and a fellowship. I am no gauge of priestly health, but from the men that I've encountered, and I probably know personally half or 3/4 of the priests in our diocese, it seems to me that the ones that have really good emotional health also are close to their brother priests. They have really good friendships with their brother priests.
That's an interesting perspective or observation, I guess.
Yeah, and a lot of them have fellowship with their brother priests once a month. And these are not support groups, but these are just opportunities to pray together, have a meal together, and share common experience. And it is really healthy for our priests to be able to do that, because oftentimes they can't open themselves up to other people, even to a deacon or the parish administrator. The only person that they can really be completely honest and vulnerable with are fellow priests. And so to have that fellowship is really important. And I think the priests who recognize that, and again, in my opinion, which means nothing, but from what I've seen, it sure seems like a good thing when they are able to have that fellowship with brother priests.
That does make an awful lot of sense, though. We all need that, and priests are, increasingly they're pastors. There's fewer and fewer associate pastors, and if there's other terms, I probably don't know them, and leadership is a lonely place.
Right.
Like you said, there's very few that you can talk to who understand your experience, because the people you're interacting with every day, well, you're the leader of them.
I remember reading an article years ago. The article was in the magazine called Christianity Today. And what caught my eye, I wasn't subscribing to it. I was actually at a library, and it caught my eye because it was a survey of Protestant pastors. And so I thought, I'll read this survey. I'd like to know what the survey, what the questions were, what their answers were. And one of the questions to the Protestant pastors was, what's the greatest challenge in your ministry? And the answer, by far and away, the most common answer was loneliness. And these were Protestant pastors who, the vast majority, were married. And they had family. They probably had children. But their answer was loneliness. So that made me think of Catholic priests.
Yeah.
Who can they go to when they just need to unload?
Yeah.
It's not going to often be you or me. It's going to be their fellow priests. And
For
so
sure.
it's so vital to have that relationship and that trust among brother priests.
Yeah, people to bounce off, how do you manage this issue, or just to learn those stories of somebody that said, boy, I had to deal with this particular issue. Tuck it away in the brain, it might come up for you,
Right.
3 years later or 30 years later.
Exactly.
But that it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I've had people ask me, what can we do for Father, to kind of help him and other sorts of things. And I tell them, I said, maybe be a friend, to try to, build a relationship and be like a friend to them, because they really don't have anybody else, and they're quite isolated sometimes.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, I would say be a friend, but avoid theological topics.
Exactly.
So, for instance, if you invite your priest over for dinner, or come over and watch, the Browns play football, just enjoy his presence. Enjoy the time together without probing questions about, so what are you going to do about the parking lot, Father?
Right.
Yeah.
Or the fish fry prices went up. What do you
Yeah.
Just leave that alone.
Let him be off duty.
Yeah, let them be off duty. That's what they want. They just want to exist and to laugh and to have fun and to know that they're not on the witness stand.
Yeah.
So when you befriend your priest, just love him without trying to get something from him.
Yeah. No, have no ulterior motives for inviting him over
For
for
inviting
dinner,
him,
right?
that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So I imagine that there are probably some amusing things that they've shared with you as well that you probably published.
Oh, they have. Yeah. So
You can skip names if you want to, but you may have published already.
well, the first interview I did was with Father Peter Grodi, who was serving at St. Michael in Finley, and I know Father Peter well, and he's a really good musician. He's really athletic. He's just a terrific man, and he plays volleyball, but he also plays the sport of ultimate frisbee.
Frisbee, okay.
And my sons have played this. I have a son-in-law who plays ultimate frisbee, and a couple of the fellas on the team that Father Peter plays on knows that he's a priest, but most of them don't, and the opposing teams don't know that he's a priest. So the couple of guys on his team that knew that he was a priest would call him Father. They would just say, hey, Father, go out to the left, or Father, why don't you throw, and one of the guys on his team, after a number of weeks, said, hey, why do they call you Father? You're not that old. You're only 32 or so. And he said, well, because I'm a Catholic priest. And the guy said, no way. He said, no, I am a Catholic priest. I am a Catholic priest. And so it just blew him away that he had known him and maybe played frisbee with him for months and just thought he was a regular dude and he was a Catholic priest.
Yeah.
So another one, there's actually a Benedictine priest whose name is Father Simon Herman, and I know him because he grew up in Finley, and he was friends with my sons, and now he is a monk at St. Meinrad.
Okay.
And the monks at St. Meinrad, you might know this, but they wear like a black robe or a black tunic that has a hood to it. That's their normal everyday garb. And Father Simon told me that, and Father Simon is a young man. I think he's 33 or 34. And he told me that at one point in time, I think he was in Indianapolis, and he and some fellow monks went into like a place like a 7-Eleven just to buy sandwiches and drinks. And they walk in wearing their black tunics. And apparently there was a sci-fi convention going on in Indianapolis at the same time, like a Comic Con or something like this.
Comic-Con, yeah.
And so there were other people in the 7-Eleven, and basically they said, what characters are you dressed up as? Like almost like a Darth Vader type of thing.
Yeah.
And they said, well, we're Catholic priests and brothers. no, so just the alarm at being dressed like a cleric in public sometimes gets reactions that are surprising and amusing.
Yeah. And I can imagine, especially so in, a robe or a tunic that's different from, that simple black, outfit with the white collar.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure. You're going to get stranger looks, I think, with those than with just the collar, quote unquote. I put that in quotes.
Sure.
But
yeah, we have, as you might know, we have our Dominican sisters serve at Finley St. Michael's, and they have a convent where they stay at, and occasionally, and I'll if I'm out walking or driving, sometimes I'll see the sisters either walking themselves or out riding bikes. And in Finley, we're kind of used to it now, but I think for people that aren't used to seeing religious sisters wearing their habits, it's kind of odd.
Yeah.
To see them out there
for
riding
us,
their
it's
bikes.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a beautiful thing to see them out,
Yeah.
walking or biking or doing their groceries.
Yeah.
But for others, it's like, what is this? Yeah. So it's a good witness.
Yeah, absolutely. And we interviewed a couple of them last year.
Yes, we did.
And one of the things that I was struck with is at least the two gals that we spoke with, two sisters, were very young. And I like that witness too, because I think there's sort of this generalized, thought or reputation or bias that, it's all, people over 60 or something.
Yeah.
Not their order. They're Mary Mother of the Eucharist, Dominican
Mm-hmm.
sisters. And I think that right now, and again, I think their average age is about 33.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
and they're thriving. They're booming. It's a terrific service that they're doing, and they're drawing women who love Christ to serve.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's beautiful. Yeah.
Very good. So,
You're listening to Holy Family Radio's Spring Spirit Drive. This is day 2 on Thursday, and we need you to call. We know you're enjoying our conversation with Deacon Matt Kettinger, but we need you to call. We need to hear that phone ring. That number is 888-287-0655. I had a little pause there.
yes, you
didn't I?
did. And maybe
Yeah.
look. Like, whoa,
I know.
Are we going all right?
Did I lose Kim there? That number is 888-287-0655. I think, Deacon Jeff, we still have matching funds on the table.
I think we
Or were they
not
used up?
much at all. I think it's pretty much gone.
Okay.
No, it is gone. I
It
can
is
tell
gone.
it's gone.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, your funds can matching or not. We
Matching or
still
not,
need your
yep.
funds. Of course, you can donate online if that's the way you prefer to, and we do get Deacon Jeff gets a notification that's been entered into the system. So you are not at all forgotten, but you can do that online at holyfamilyradio.fm, as in FM radio, or on the Holy Family Radio app. And you can also text the word GIVE to 419-969-3255, and that'll take you to the online pledging format as
Yep.
well. We're trying
Yep.
to make it as easy as we can.
Very easy.
Yeah.
And next year we'll have Venmo. We will.
Yeah.
Not this year though. I screwed up putting it in, and it didn't work. So we'll have to figure out another plan.
Yeah,
So
you'll get it figured out by next year.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. For sure.
Absolutely.
So hey, so going back to you, Deacon Matt, where can we find this podcast of yours?
Well, thanks for asking. There are a number of ways to find it. If somebody just typed into the Google search bar, The Padre Pad, 3 words, it will come up.
Okay.
Also, if somebody uses one of the podcast platforms like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pandora, again, just going to that and typing in The Padre Pad, it would come up. Right.
All right.
Fantastic.
Very good.
Excuse me.
So,
Can I ask one
yeah,
more question
no,
that I was
please.
really curious about?
Yeah.
What advice, I imagine you've probably even had people approach you, but what advice do you like to give for people that might be considering the diaconate?
Well, the first and I think the best advice is prayer. And it's continuous prayer. It's just not a one day, one novena. It is continual prayer to seek the will of God and to unite the will of the person with that of God. So maybe the diaconate's the right thing, maybe it's not, but even if somebody's asking that question, that means that God is nudging that person to consider it strongly. So if God is nudging someone's heart, move with where God wants you. And because I think ultimately we won't be happy in this life unless we align our will with that of God's. So my first answer would be prayer. Maybe the second would be, if the person is married, have the conversation with his wife, because again, as I mentioned earlier, it's critical to have not only the support of the wife, but it's going to be, even though the man is the deacon, they're going to serve as a team to a degree. So having that conversation with one's wife. And then I think maybe the third thing is talk to deacons. Not only the deacon maybe who's at your parish, but seek out deacons at other parishes and talk to 3 or 4 or 5 of them and just ask their experience, what has blessed them, what has been challenging, and maybe what they would do differently. But have conversations and delve deeper into it so that the person is informed to know this is for me or this is not where God wants me to go.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a discernment all the way around.
It is.
Once you're ordained a deacon, then it's discerning where am I supposed to serve and best apply my gifts, and that answer is varied for everybody. Right. So I want to thank you for coming in today.
It's been a pleasure. I appreciate you having me out,
Yeah.
Jeff. So thanks. And thanks, Kim, for being with me. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. We really appreciate you making the effort to drive over here and be in studio with us. We always love having our guests. I mean, we're happy to talk to them on the phone if that's what works for them. But it I don't know. It gives me a little more shot of energy and, to have somebody in person.
Nicer to have a conversation face to face.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah,
Agreed.
absolutely.
Well, thank you. And I hope the drive goes well for you. Thanks.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Appreciate
Thank
that.
you so much.
All right. So we just got done talking to Matt, father. Hey, do people ask you? Do they say father
All the time.
All the time. Yeah.
Yeah, they do. At the end of Mass, people say, "Hey, good homily, Father,"
Yeah.
or "Thanks, Father." I've stopped correcting them.
I have too. I have stopped correcting them. If that's what they say, it's fine.
Yeah.
But
if they call me the bishop, I'd probably
yeah, draw a line there
draw
a
a
little
line.
bit. All right. You're listening to the Spring Spirit Drive here on Holy Family Radio. This is Deacon Jeff Compton along with Kim Schrader in the studio. We're coming up on the 9 o'clock hour, the top of the hour. So I just want to invite you to call now that we've wrapped up our interview with Deacon Matt Kettinger. So please call us, 888-287-0655. 888-287-0655. You can text us at 419-969-3255 to make your donation online. You can go to our website also, holyfamilyradio.fm, and hit the donate button or page, and it'll take you to the exact same place, and you can make your donation there. So we're going to go to our break for top of the hour. We'll be back after this, and we'll be in studio.